What's up everybody and welcome to another episode of Living With It. On today's episode we've got the TNT 899 Benelli, which belongs to a good friend of mine. He goes by the name of BuFFMotO. So guys, let's chat about this motorcycle. So let's start this segment. 1911 was the year when Benelli was established. Not only do you get a heritage with this bike, but you get the racing pedigree along with it. Benelli was very famous back in the days for participating in the Isle of Man TT, and it was fairly successful over there. There is something special about an Italian motorcycle. Whenever you look at one or whenever you get on one, it just makes you feel special. I mean, look at this motorcycle, guys. This is a 10-year-old plus design, but it still looks modern and futuristic. If you look at the motorcycle as a whole, it's chiseled and there is not an ounce of fats on the motorcycle. For example, the trestle frame and the trellis swing arm are beautifully done, and it adds an Italian touch to the motorcycle. It looks like a masterpiece rather than a motorcycle, and there are certain more design elements such as the side mounted radiator and the carbon fiber parts and the amazing suspension, which we will get to in a bit, which makes this bike stand out from the crowd. So powering this motorcycle is an inline 3 water cooled and oil cooled system. Now these two radiators are for the water cooling and there's one at the bottom for the oil. Basically this bike has 3 radiators. It's got about an output of 120 odd bhp at 88 Nm of torque. It gets lively after 3,500 to 4,000 rpm, and it's got a very strong mid-range. Now the best part about this motorcycle is the sound. It's like an Italian orchestra. Especially this particular one sounds absolutely magnificent because of the carbon fiber exhaust which is equipped in this bike. It's got a very mechanical sound to it, almost like a dry clutch. The only complaint I have with this bike is that the throttle is very snatchy. What I mean by that is your on and off transitions of the throttle. If you're at a slow speed and you get off the throttle, it really wants to throw you off the bike. So that is the only complaint. So the bike weighs in at about 230 kgs wet, which is quite a lot. You may think all this weight will make the bike handle badly, but you would be absolutely wrong. It handles as good as it looks. If I'm honest, this bike feels like a bigger KTM, and that is a very high praise. This is down to a couple of factors. First and foremost, the chassis. Chassis is basically the backbone of every motorcycle, and this one has got an absolutely fantastic chassis. It's rigid when you require it to be, and it flexes where you require it to be as well. The second factor, which is the most important factor of this motorcycle, is the radiator. Now, as you can see, it's placed in a really awkward position. It's not just there for aesthetics, but there's a very good reason. Now, when you put the radiator on top, the engine can be forward biased, which helps in the weight distribution, as well as putting the radiator over here displaces the heat away from the rider, which in turn leads to a very cool ride when you are on the motorcycle. Now the most important factor about this is the suspension setup. Up front we've got a 50 mm inverted Marzocchi suspension, which is non-adjustable, and at the back we've got a single monoshock which is adjustable for preload and rebound. Now let me explain you what the suspension really feels like. When you're riding this bike, the suspension is firm enough for you to give you confidence when you're going into a corner, and it is soft enough for absorbing the bumps as well. It's got a very fine balance in between a superbike and a street bike, which gives you a really good and positive feel when you're on the saddle of this motorcycle. The braking of this bike is phenomenal, guys. It stops on a dime. Up front we've got twin 320mm Brembo brakes, and at the back we've got a single 240mm Brembo brakes. Now another cool thing about this motorcycle is that it comes with the steel braided brake lines from the factory. The complaint I have about the braking is, guys, this bike is not equipped with ABS, which I feel is important in our road conditions. So it's about time we invite the owner of this gorgeous motorcycle, BuFFMotO. Come on in. How are you? Great. Thanks for coming on my show.
My pleasure, my pleasure.
Likewise. So let's start this segment of Living With It. So I'm sure you're aware of how this works.
Yeah,
So let me start with a few basic questions. How long have you owned this gorgeous bike for?
I owned this bike for about, not about 6 months exactly.
6 months exactly. And why did you buy this bike?
As soon as I looked at this bike, I fell in love with it. I searched for it, reviews, researched about it. I fell in love with it even more. Then I just went for it.
It's a fair point. We would like you to share your ownership experience about owning this bike. How was it?
Overall, the riding capability of this bike is exceptional. I've never seen any other bike that rides like this, because the weight and the power creates a very strange combination which makes it excellent for cities as well as highways. It gives you the stability because of the weight, but you don't feel the weight when you're riding in city and you can just cut around.
True. And also the bike doesn't heat up.
It doesn't heat up at all. I've been in peak traffic. This bike has been through some rough times. When there were floods in the city, it was out, it was riding in the floods. It has been in between trucks, stuck in traffic. The temperature never goes above 90 degrees.
Let's talk about what's what on the bike. So explain the viewers, what all have you done to this motorcycle?
So obviously when you get a motorcycle, first thing is safety. You need to keep it safe. With the side mounted radiators, my first concern was that itself.
Right.
So I got the crash guards. Second thing was the exhaust. Obviously, if you've got such a nice bike, then you need the
music, the Italian music.
Yes. So the triple symphony. Because of that, I got. This is a high performance exhaust by Benelli themselves.
Okay.
So
this is an in-house exhaust which Benelli provides.
Exactly. So you can get a full system exhaust, but I opted for the slip-on.
I feel it's more than sufficient.
It's more than sufficient because I was not honestly going for a performance. I was just going for the sound.
True.
So I just went for the slip-on. The final thing I did was, I felt the gearing was a little tall for the city, so I just went one down on the front sprocket, the final drive.
Right. So that in turn gives you a better acceleration of the line?
Yes, it gives a better acceleration, and it contributes in the snatchy throttle a little bit.
Great. So let's talk about the positive and the negative aspects of the bike. Let's start with the positives.
So the positive is, as we spoke, that we have the twin radiators, there is no heating at all, and with the oil cooler, the engine also doesn't heat up as much as you would expect. Now, apart from that, we also have premium parts in this. We have those carbon fiber fenders, we have Brembo discs, and they also added to the overall value of the bike.
Absolutely.
Now, the suspension is so nice that you handle in such a way, and adding with the weight distribution, it just creates such a handling package, because in the city, as you said, it's like a big KTM, and you feel just like that.
Very true.
Cutting around in the city.
I think the feedback of the bike is excellent.
Definitely, most definitely. The overall mechanical feedback that you get, whether you're in a corner, whether you're accelerating, or whether with the throttle.
Yes.
It lets you ride the way you want it to ride.
Yeah. True. So that's about the positive aspect of the motorcycle. Now let's talk about the negative part of the bike.
So one negative aspect is that the ride height is quite low, so you have to be careful about with the bumps and potholes. And we also have the difficulty of availability of parts, since it comes from outside the country, from Italy.
Yes.
That's why it's quite difficult. Now the side radiators also, they create an issue because you are concerned it might fall over and get damaged because it's on the side.
Right.
Since it is designed as with clip-ons as well, so the turning radius is quite big.
Yeah.
And another thing, on this side we also have the issue with the key.
I noticed that as well. Yes.
It's quite difficult to reach,
especially with gloves.
With gloves, quite really difficult. Now electronics, they create some hindrance because the lights, they tend to seep in some water time to time.
That is a classic Italian electronic problem.
It's Italian, what to do. And I think the last thing I can say is the meter is a little dated.
Yes.
I find it okay, but some people have pointed out that.
Well, it's a little bit of the age which shows of the motorcycle, but I think it's nitpicking if we speak about
compared to what's going on today. Yes, we can say it.
Yeah. So let's talk about the maintenance of the bike. How expensive is it to do a simple service at the company?
So basic service, which includes your oil change and filter change, that would set you back by 12,000 rupees.
And the parts would be expensive of the motorcycle as well.
Some parts are not. As for example, as I said, the oil and filter would cost you that much. But if you're just changing the spark plug, each spark plug is like 300 rupees.
Okay. So a mix between the pricing of the parts. Now guys, let me talk about the buyer's advice of this motorcycle. If you were to buy this motorcycle, there are a couple of factors you need to remember. First and foremost, check the radiators for any repairs, as he's pointed out. If the bike has taken a drop and the radiator has been repaired, it will set you back quite a lot of money. Another thing, guys, you need to remember is that make sure that the bike is having a clean service history, as if you have serviced this bike outside of Benelli, the 4-year warranty will get void. So make sure the one which you're picking up has not encountered that issue. Another thing you have to remember is the pricing of the motorcycle. Today we are in 2018 and this motorcycle is 2017. If you were to buy this motorcycle in a stock condition, it would cost you somewhere in the range of 7 and 8 lakh rupees. Out of 10, I would like you to rate your living with it experience for the viewers.
Living with it financially, it's slightly low because of the fuel efficiency and the service cost. I would say it's about 6.5, 7.
6.5 around roughly. And overall your experience?
Overall, just because how much you fall in love with this bike, I would give a gracious 8.5.
8.5. So that leaves me with the final question. BuFFMotO, can I take this bike for a ride?
You know what? Let's go for a ride.
Let's go for a ride, guys. You heard the man. Let's go and take this bike for a ride. So guys, I would like to thank BuFFMotO for bringing this beautiful motorcycle and showing it and sharing it with all of us. Also guys, do like this video, share it with your friends and subscribe to my channel. Also, the links of Buff's channel are going to be in the description. So if you haven't yet subscribed to his channel, go and do that as well, and you will get to see some amazing rides on this motorcycle. So it's time for me to end. Till the next time, keep the rubber side down, over and out.